Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, December the 16th. And welcome to our commentary. Before we get to our topic, I just wanted to mention I saw a really interesting interview about a couple of hours ago, around noon Tuesday. And it was with Hugh Hewitt. Hugh, of course, is a longtime radio host, columnist, and he was on Fox News. And they were talking about the finances of the city of Chicago. And it's a mess. It's a total mess. I don't know how else to explain it. And they may have to go chapter 9 or whatever it is, bankruptcy. I think it's there's a number. I don't remember what number it is, but cities can use that option. Basically, what you have in Chicago is less and less tax revenues, and more of the budget for the city of Chicago is going to pensions and to pay the interest. So it's an unworkable system. The city is not growing. It's not attracting new business. On the contrary, businesses are moving out. Taxpayers are getting out. And again, it all comes back to the same situation. You know, the city has been very badly managed. And I tell you, if there's a place in the country that could use a change, a regime change, as they say, it's the city of Chicago. So I don't know if it's all going to work out, but the city's a mess. The city is a total mess. And if you can dig it up on the internet, look it up. Hugh Hewitt, Fox News, December the 16th. I think you'll really understand the problem in that city a city that doesn't work. I don't know how else to say. Horrible mayor, an absolutely horrible mayor who doesn't seem to understand what his job is. I mean, the guy is completely out of touch with reality. Well, I have a post over at the American Thinker today, and I've got another one coming out tomorrow, talking about Chile, the country in South America that had an election on Sunday, and the candidate from the right, Jose Antonio Cast, was elected president in huge numbers. It was like a 60-40 vote, and the turnout was very large. And now, of course, everybody's talking about Chile moving to the right. There is a tendency in some of these South American countries, as well as Latin American countries in general, to be moving to the right. And I don't think that it's necessarily ideology. I don't think that it's people in Chile woke up one day and said, okay, we're going to move to the right from an ideological standpoint. In other words, I don't think people, whether it's Paraguay, Bolivia, Peru, now Chile, Ecuador, El Salvador, and I think very soon in Colombia when they have elections next year. Governments from the right or candidates from the right are Ecuador. That's the other one. I don't remember if I mentioned that one. But those are all candidates from the right who are winning elections. And they're winning elections, again, not so much because of ideology, not because they're saying, vote for me because I'm a conservative. It's because vote for me because people are sick and tired of what's happening in those countries. The chaos, the crime, the collapse of structure. And that's what's driving more and more, particularly the middle class in many of those countries, to say, we've had enough of this. We've had enough of this, and we're changing direction. It kind of started, and I got to give a lot of credit to President Bukele in El Salvador, because he's kind of the one who started this. And he started by doing something very, very simple, super simple. He simply said, okay, we have a lot of criminals on the streets. We have a lot of crime. We're going to take the criminals and we're going to lock them up. So they're not out in the streets anymore causing problems. They're not out in the streets, stealing purses or breaking into businesses or whatever. And he started doing that. He got very tough with the gangs and the criminal associations. And all of a sudden, El Salvador, the quality of life began to come back. I talked to people here in the Dallas area from El Salvador, and, I don't know how scientific my survey is. Probably not, because I'm not taking formally a poll. But when everybody tends to agree, that's a pretty good number. And they all agree that things are better, that he's brought about something that no one had ever done before, which is to say, okay, we're going to have order. And one way of having order is to take criminals and put them in jail and lock them up. and then all of a sudden the streets are safe. I mean, it's just remarkable. It's just remarkable, isn't it, how that happens? You lock up criminals and the streets are safe. Can you imagine if they tried something like that in Chicago or New York City or whatever? You know, what a difference it would make. But that's what they're doing. So I think the public got fed up with the crime. I think that's a big factor, the crime, the total chaos in the streets. And, you know, it's difficult to run a business when people are breaking in with guns, you know, stealing your inventory or whatever. It's also tough to run a business when you've got all kinds of extortion going on. I mean, that's a problem they're having in Mexico, and they're not doing anything about it, but that's a huge problem in Mexico, the whole problem of extortion. So I think that's what's driving all of this. It's not so much we're going to vote for the right because we took a political science class and we like being a conservative more than a liberal. I don't think that that's what was driving this. I just think it's a matter of results. Another big issue, too, related to the crime is the influence of the narcos and the idea that many people have, which I think is correct, that many of the left-wing governments are either scared of the narcos or maybe even controlled by the narcos. I think that's clearly the case of Venezuela. I mean, that country right there has become a narco state in every sense. Colombia, to some extent, as well. But so, you know, you get these situations where the public says enough is enough, and they have a choice to vote, and they vote to get these people elected. And then, of course, a lot of the international reaction is like, oh my gosh, you know, the new president of Chile is anti-immigrant. No, he's not anti-immigrant. I think he's the grandson of German immigrants. His wife, if you look at her name, it's not a Spanish name, so I don't know what her heritage is, but she's not, you know, she has to be an immigrant as well. And if, you know, Chile over the years has had a long history of immigrants coming into the country and settling down. So they're not anti-immigrant. What they're against is the kind of illegal immigration and the chaos that the illegal immigration brings with it. When you don't know who these people are, they're coming in, they're using your services, well, that creates a problem. That creates a problem. I mean, I was listening to some of the voters down in Chile on election day. I was watching some of the broadcast on the internet from, you know, Chilean TV, and they were talking to people and asking them, you know, what's going on with these illegal immigrants. I guess they call them irregular immigrants, whatever they call them. And he says, well, the problem is that it's chaotic. We don't know who they are. They're using public services. We don't have no idea who they are. So, you know, something had to be done about it. So the new president of Chile has already said that effective on Inauguration Day, which is 90 days, I guess, in March, effective on Inauguration Day, they're going to start deporting people. He's basically offering people to leave on their own. Just say, hey, pack up and go, and nothing will happen. But if they're still there on Inauguration Day, then they will be deported. Now, the way they're going to deport them is interesting, because at least I was listening to him and he was saying, what we're going to do is we're going to require that when people come in for public services or anything, whenever they have any contact with the authorities, they're going to have to prove that they're in the country legally. So that's how they're going to do it. It seems to me a pretty effective way to do it. So these countries are moving to the right. I expect Colombia is going to be next. Venezuela is probably going to fall. And when Venezuela falls, I think Cuba will follow shortly after. And then the big question is Brazil. What's going to happen in Brazil? And there, according to the latest polling information, it's a dead heat, really, between the current incumbent, who is not a crazy lefty, but he is kind of a center-left guy, and that's Lula. And then there's a candidate from the right. It's basically a tie right now in some of the polls that I've seen from down there. So probably that one will be hard to predict. But if you look at what's happening in Brazil, there could be the same kind of change. So more and more of these countries are saying, enough of this, let's try a different approach. And then, of course, as I write in my post that hopefully will be out tomorrow, then you see what's happening in Seattle, and you see what's happening in New York City, where those those people are going to the left. They're actually electing socialists, the people that have been rejected in many of these Latin American countries. But look, I guess they're going to find out. They're going to find out whether it's New York City or Seattle. They're going to find out that there's no free lunch, and that these people just tell you what you want to hear, and they're just going to be very disappointed. But it's really remarkable what's happening in Latin America, and we salute the voters down there for making the choices that they are making, intelligent choices, to say the least. Just a quick note on this day in history, 1944, the Battle of the Bulge began, and that was a huge sort of battle there at the end of World War II. It was sort of like the last scream, if you will, from the Nazis. And I've got a post about this that I wrote years ago, and it was a podcast actually that I did with Barry Jacobson, and I reposted that. If you follow me on X, you'll be able to see it there. I reposted that, and that was with Barry Jacobson, and that was such a good show. I tell you, you need to listen to that if you're interested in what happened in that tremendous battle, the Battle of the Bulge. And Barry's such a knowledgeable guy. He went into a lot of detail about it. And I've always been fascinated by that war. I've always been fascinated by that battle, I should say, the Battle of the Bulge, that began almost on the same day that Glenn Miller's plane disappeared. I mean, talk about a coincidence there. Glenn Miller's plane went down, disappeared, and the Battle of the Bulge began almost the same day. Those crazy coincidences that we see in history. Well, thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.